This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Ziak and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode of Dig Me Out 90s and Aughts Rock. Thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. Join the union to vote on albums, pick one to discuss with us on the show, get access to bonus episodes and our private Discord community, keep the podcast ad-free, and make the next episode happen by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com. Jay, joining us for the first time.
Let's go.
All the way from the left coast, as we'd like to say here in the central, we're not even Midwest, we're more Eastern, I guess.
Great Lakes.
Great Lakes. Yeah, there you go. Rust Belt.
There you go.
Keith Tasker, how you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be here. So figured it was time. I think I looked back. There was one hardcore record you guys have done. So
would that be Refused?
Yes. Which will play into this, which we'll get to. Yes.
Yeah, it's not a genre that we have covered that much, partly because I don't think Jay and I are that familiar, but also our listeners just have not, suggested those records, or even I'm sure some have been submitted to the polls, but have probably maybe fallen by the wayside because of more familiar records. But since we brought up the genre, maybe you'd like to introduce the band and album that we will be checking out for this episode.
Yeah, so we're going to be checking out Purusam from Umeå, Sweden. Their second full-length album, the Daybreak Chronicles, released in 1997, I believe. Yeah.
Yep, on Desperate Fight Records, which was active during the 90s. I believe Dennis Lixon from the Refused was involved in that label.
Yeah. Him and one other college buddy from Umeå started it. It's the lead singer of, I can never pronounce it, another hardcore band from there, Abananda. So
oh good, you said it, because I couldn't figure out how to say that.
Yeah,
it's a lot of consonants.
Yes.
So yeah, there is not a ton of information about this band. I actually had to go to I Googled the name and the album title, and not much was coming up. There's a Discogs page with a little bit of information. And then I ended up on the Swedish Wikipedia, which I didn't know it was different by region, but they're in the Swedish Wikipedia, but not in the American Wikipedia. How is that possible? I thought all Wikipedias were one. Are you telling me that there's
divide to unite these?
Yeah. I'm sure the Swedish Wikipedia is pretty interesting because, if you look at Sweden, I would say per capita, just bangers bands and influential bands that have come out of that country in the 80s and 90s is insane.
Yes. And it's small. People like Rhode Island producing 50 awesome bands. Probably bigger than Rhode Island, but
yeah, this was kind of relevant now because hardcore is kind of having a resurgence in the media with there goes my camera with Turnstile and Knocked Loose and whatnot, and of course Refused was the big band from there. But this was proto metalcore. It was metalcore before they knew what to call it. I saw it was called fantasy hardcore at a time. Yeah, but it's one of the first kind of examples you could see or hear of harsh and clean vocals.
Yeah.
The differentiating being with Purusam was it was female clean vocals. In hardcore, not that many female people putting music out, although another male band, the Donuts, was all females. They were 15. They had put out a couple of records. But metalcore pretty much has all its starts in Sweden with Purusam, of course, Refused, which is a little bit more hardcore. but then also At the Gates, In Flames, all those bands, come from Sweden.
And you mentioned
Opeth.
You mentioned that this is like it is a fantasy. The fantasy, and then there's the word Chronicles, and the track list actually divides the album into 3 sections. Tracks 1 through 4 are The Way of the Hero. Tracks 5 through 8 are The Great Conqueror, and tracks 9 through 12 are The Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
So it's got a whole theme thing going on.
It's almost a concept record, which was also unheard of in hardcore at that time. When you look at it, these guys were mid to late teenagers. I mean, if you go back to their first record, and you could hear the Refused, and there's a reason for that. If you go back to the first record, which is The Way of a Dying Race, John Branstrom was in the band. He was the singer at that time. At the same time, he was in Refused, and then would later go full-time Refused. And you can hear it, like in this record, this was a year before The Shape of Punk to Come, and you can hear the middlings, even though Branson isn't here, this is still the same town. There's some stuff that made it into, this is kind of like the sound that shaped the sound of Shape of Punk to Come. Like there's some stuff in here. You hear, the pipe organ, the keys, things that weren't relevant in hardcore at all. Plus just things in these songs that were decades ahead of their time. I mean, you've got, I know like in one song, the 7th track, Atma, at 41 seconds, it sounds like there's a cannon going off. And you're just like, that's cool. When's that gonna, and they don't ever repeat it. They play their trick and they do it one time and that's it. And I think this, and really their first record, is a prime example of a bunch of kids playing on the very fringe of their talent. You could hear these songs about to fall apart. And they're and it's self-produced too. And so these guys are playing, obviously, where most metalcore got influenced, when you heard the early stuff from like Vision of Disorder, Integrity, Hatebreed, Refuse, Snapcase, that all had kind of influences of death metal and thrash. These guys went back and pulled influences from, Halloween and Creator, and you can hear Iron Maiden all over this with that just chugging kind of rhythmic, train coming down the track rhythm, and just the dueling guitars. You can find some old footage of them in concert, and they are doing the 80s metal, dueling guitars, sticking their guitars between their legs, spinning around, which at the time hardcore wasn't doing. I mean, this is
right. It's in the 90s, right?
Yeah, this is the 90s, mid 90s.
It's like
right
the most,
when that is starting.
That would be like in America, that would be the least cool thing you could do at the time.
Right.
Yeah. But then 10 years later, everybody, Bring Me the Horizon, Architects, everybody's doing it. And this is proto metalcore. In the hardcore community, there's this mythical album. It's Marauder's Master Color. It's like the forgotten hardcore record. Everybody knows about it now. The reason I brought this one to it is everybody needs to know about this one, because this band just got lost. These people aren't Sarkatel. None of these members are doing anything. I mean, John got kicked out of Refused, so he's not doing anything anymore. And the main guys, Johnny Johansson and Frederick Holmstadt, which is the drummer, this guy is a tight drummer, and he's probably 16, 17 doing this. They're not doing anything anymore. It's time somebody tapped them for a festival and said, let's
right.
get this back out there. Everybody else is coming back. Why not these guys?
For sure.
It looks like Frederick's worked on some other stuff in like production, because he's got like he mixed a Helicopters track.
Okay, I didn't see that.
And there was something with the Hives too. I think he worked on Veni Vidi Vicious. Yeah, he recorded that album. So he must have gone. Maybe he was the one that was sort of leading the self-recording thing. The fact that he then went on to do like bands like the Hives and stuff. besides, I was going to mention, so that for the people that are listening, so you have Frederick Holmstead on drums, keyboards, and percussion, Johnny Johansson on guitar and piano, Anna-Lena Svanborg on bass and vocals, Anna-Marie Million on cello, Mikhail Forsgren on guitar, Tobias Willig on vocals and piano, and then there's like the violin player and the flute player and some other folks.
This is hardcore with strings and horns
and flutes.
Where does that happen? And it hasn't happened since.
Yeah.
These guys, this was, really technical, progressive metalcore before that was ever a thing. And I would put these guys, as far as influence, whether they know it or not, right up there in hardcore with Youth of Today and 108 and Shelter and those bands. I'd put them in the same. Me personally, as a hardcore fan, I'd put them in the same boat as like a Slint, as far as setting the groundwork for what would come a decade later. At least Slint got the credit. They haven't.
True.
Right.
Probably because of the fact that Slint was from Kentucky.
Yeah.
And so it's
Louisville,
easier to.
There's a whole nother thing. Louisville hardcore. It is a scene that is deep and roots. And trust me, I could go off for hours on that. I did a 9-hour road trip to Louisville to see a band's final performance back in '98. So
that is dedication, folks.
That was, yes. And I got to see this band there, one of the few times Ink and Dagger ever played in concert. Full makeup. That was another hardcore band doing things nobody else did. They kissed it up. They had thematics and blood and vampires. Yeah.
Nice.
The entire reason My Chemical Romance even exists.
Okay. You're
putting a lot of pieces of the puzzle together for what happens in the 2000s.
Yeah.
This is nice.
Yeah.
Especially the parts that Tim and I probably don't know the backstory of. Like, we know like a big chunk of like how we got there in the 2000s, but yeah, there's a bunch of bands that were inspired by hardcore that we're not familiar with that starting to make sense now. Yeah,
especially, there's these mythic hardcore records, and Purusam needs to be in there, but it's refused, and Snapcase and Earth Crisis. This was straight edge hardcore, which was a whole nother subgenre of straight edge. Now, these weren't militant straight edge. That did happen in Yuma. There's rumors of a certain band firebombing meat trucks, but
wow.
Refused during, I want to say on the record before Shape of Punk to Come, they wrote like a manifesto of like vegan, straight edge, militant, fight the man. Mm-hmm. And why this is a fantasy record. And there's like songs, stuff about dragons, a lot of songs about time, a lot of songs about daybreak and the difference between light and dark. That is this record. There's a lot of light and dark, the heavy screaming and just hardcore. And then she comes in with this vocal, proto post-hardcore kind of singing, adding some beauty to it. But all the songs, while it's a concept record, all the songs seem to have this thing of, the past influences the present. Man is destroying himself. As the day breaks, the light shines light on what man has wrought. And with that will bring our ultimate destruction. So it's not joyful whatsoever. And very little hardcore is, because it's shining a light on things. But I don't know, maybe growing up in Sweden where it's always covered in ice, makes you a little dour.
Mm-hmm.
Sweden and Seattle.
Yeah. There, you could see parallels there too.
Yeah. Over at Patreon, we got a comment from Gavin. He said, when I first saw this, I expected it to be some kind of doom metal while hoping it might be a post-rock album. So the result was a bit of surprise. A kind of metal album with hardcore styling over the top and the occasional female vocal thrown in. Musically, this is great, and I like the song with the female vocal, and where there's spoken voice as well, kind of reminded me of early Faith No More. Ultimately, I've gone with an EP as the screaming vocal isn't melodic enough, and it gets to me after a while. A great suggestion and a worthy dig, and worth a dig. So that's what Gavin had to say. Jay, I want to know what you have to say. What works for you on Daybreak Chronicles by Purusam? Did I say that right, Keith?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Oh. Purusam?
I mean, it is Sanskrit, so it's probably kind of a Hindu pronunciation.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. The guitars are so engaging on this record. I mean, right out of the gate, they just jump out of the speakers, literally, and just grab you. There's so many cool ideas.
Sunrise to find another day.
I think the production choice with them makes all the difference in the world here. So it's a very honest, dry, hot amp. Like you just feel like your head is right on the amp speaker. Like there's a Marshall just cranked and your head is right there on top of it. So that to me just sets the sort of tone overall of this record. Is it's going to be like punchy in your face. Guitars are going to be aggressive, but the twists and turns, I think, hold together so well because they stick so well to that sound. They don't vary too far off with lots of effects or on the guitars or doing things that are, even when they, get technical, because it's recorded so dry, the technical stuff sounds, I don't know. I think you mentioned, Keith, like people like right on the edge of their abilities. Like it feels like immediate and like you can feel the performance. It doesn't feel like showy and glossy.
Yeah.
When you get into technical things that are finger tapping or sweeps and you've got a lot of effects on that and a high level precision, like it starts to feel distant, and this never feels distant. So all of those moments where, they'll do a sweep run or there'll be a really cool, like, riff mixed in with the chord break or harmonized solos or pinched harmonics, all these things that go beyond just, palm muting and playing punk style riffs. It feels like this burst of energy as opposed to, I'm going to show off how well I can play guitar. And I think that makes the record just so engaging. Like it just grabs you and pulls you along every step of the way. The guitar, the way they complement each other is amazing. The two guitars, tone wise, it's very similar, but they're constantly alternating between, one of them be playing like their parts are often offset. Like somebody's playing like a really technical, like riff. And then the other one's doing something that's a little bit more like power metal. And then they'll switch. And then on a dime, it'll like cut time and you go from like this galloping Iron Maiden feel to like something totally different, like more of a 90s, like syncopated feel. So that was, I think the guitar sound, the riffing, the range of the styles, the fact that to me, it sounds very, obviously you can hear the Refused in here, the similarities, I think mostly through the vocal approach, rhythm, how the bursts sections happen. But to me, this is much more grounded in classic metal, which is cool. Like I'd never heard anything like I mean, when I heard Refuse, I was like, I've never heard anything like this. This is wild. But then this is in some ways similar, but different in that I've never heard, a band with kind of a punk hardcore aesthetic be this technically competent and even like knowledgeable of metal to where, they just wear it. They just use it as a tool, and for me, it made it accessible. Like I could get into it from at that level, and identify with the things that, had that power metal or Iron Maiden feel, and also being familiar and, liking the Shape of Punk to Come, fusing those two things together, made it easy for me to get into this. Whereas I think not all hardcores like that for me. So this was, just really, I'll just kind of stick to the guitar point, was just really, it's crazy these guys didn't go on and do more, just the technical ability for this age and the production, it's not hiding anything. It's all right there. If there's a mess up, you're going to hear it, so it's really impressive from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so immediate, is that there are mistakes and mess ups, and it's in there. They just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what like you said, it's almost like you're just putting your head in the Marshall and they're going.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna go along for the ride. And if you go back to the first record, it's a year earlier and they are a year less talented, but probably they're playing right on the edge. And it's the only record I know of where you can feel like at any moment this whole thing's going to fall apart. And that's the first record. This one, they're a little bit tighter, but still there's those moments where, like you said, they're playing on the very edge of their capability. And then all of a sudden it just, at like the 2-minute mark, it stops and they slow it down and they do this little interlude. And then there's the interlude tracks that could honestly be video game soundtracks or something.
Yep.
They're pianos and cellos and violins. Like, where does this come from? These guys had way too many ideas to not keep going, and they just stopped.
What worked for you, Tim?
Well, I like the fact that if you just sort of drop the needle, so to speak, at any point in this record, you can get a completely different record. Like you said, like at the beginning of Atma, I mean, that sounds like you're going to go with Bruce Dickinson and Ride the Wind of Valkyrie or something like that. But then they cut to like a halftime for the verse when he actually starts with the vocal, so it changes up. But there are a lot of parts like that. Like there are quiet parts that have, like you said, the cello and these atmospheric sounds that I was not expecting at all. And throughout it, you just get like little bits and pieces of things that are so unexpected for, I didn't really look up anything about the record going into it. I didn't know that they were hardcore or metalcore or whatever. I was just like, I'm just listening to the record. Based on the album cover, I was like, well, this could be anything. We could be listening to a sitar album from Ravi Shankar based on that album cover.
Yeah.
So it was cool to hear from song to song in the way that like the Refuse do a much more extreme version on The Shape of Punk to Come, but because they did a lot of the editing and sampling and things. This to me sounds like the human version of that, like the we're in a room and we're playing all together, and it's not edited in a studio and pieced together the way that a lot of that record is. This sounds more like you said, like human beings really pushing it, putting out really interesting ideas from, like you said, incorporating metal of like the British new wave of heavy metal sort of stuff. And then also hearing like just, with like 80s Metallica thrash type metal, and combining that with the female vocal at times really is an interesting sound, because it was not happening, and it sounds more like what I hear in the last 10 years with metal bands having a female singer, where that wasn't usually ever the case. Usually you would have a guy who's belting it out, but I don't know that there are as many of those singers anymore. And so they're pursuing having women as the lead vocal because they can hit those big operatic high notes. And she doesn't necessarily go that big. It's a more restrained than that. I did a couple passes just listening to specific things, and I was just paying attention to her, and she's more like in the ethereal end of things than in the screamy belty end of things, which I think works well in contrast to his vocal. I think if she had been trying to match his energy, it probably would have been like too much. Whereas because they're in two different headspaces, it kind of balances it out and makes it work better. Because I'll be honest, I am not a huge fan of the screaming vocal. It's just never been my thing. There's that, and like the Cookie Monster vocal in metal is just it's not my jam. I think I'm a little too old. I guess. I don't know, because I just did not grow up listening, or it was a little too, I didn't grow up listening to punk and hardcore is the thing. So I had no frame of reference. So like the first time I heard the Refused album was the first time I ever heard someone singing like that. And I was like, you're allowed to do that? Like, what? You can just scream? So it's always been a little bit like, okay, I'm not sure how you're doing that. I don't understand how their vocal lasts. Like, how do you sing that way for an entire show and then be able to talk for the next week? And they're touring and playing shows every day. And I'm like, that doesn't seem possible. I got to imagine there is a vocal teacher who is like losing their mind at how rough that is on their vocal cords. But a lot of people do it. So I guess it's a way they figured out that it doesn't shred their vocal cords. But besides that, I just, especially with when I put my headphones on and listening to the two guitar stuff, like you said, Jay, happening, and just there's such an interesting approach to this whole record. And I like that it's ambitious and it's kind of a concept record, and they push the envelope with the instrumental, interludes, which is like very Failure-esque, which I'm, a fan of that when they do that. So it pushes the right buttons for me on the musical end. Keith, I know you're a fan of this record, but what are the things that work best for you on this in comparison maybe to other hardcore albums in a similar vein?
Yeah, because I mean, this was 97, so this was right in the height of kind of straight edge hardcore. Victory Records was in their prime before they started getting into emo. So this was prime hardcore time, prime post hardcore, and there's a whole subgenre, Christian hardcore, that I listened to. And what I liked was, like you said, like it was different, like, because we were listening to Earth Crisis and Snapcase and Strife and Vision of Disorder and things like that, which leaned heavily into like thrash and that kind of death metal, where this went even farther back to those bands' influence. And they just wore it on their sleeves like, yes, we are going to stop and do a minute-long dueling guitar solo. Nobody else was doing that unless, you're on the new Scorpions record. Like nobody's doing that in hardcore. Nobody was doing that in alternative metal at the time. I mean, this is the mid-90s. This is prime Creed and fuel time. So nobody's doing that.
Mm-mm.
So it was so different because at this time I was a radio DJ. I hosted a metal show. So I heard it all. And, you were starting to get new metal and things at this time. And hardcore was really pushing. And just the female vocals, you didn't hear females in hardcore, let alone metal at the time at all. I mean, you had a couple here and there, but for the most part, and not that it's way great now, but at least you got Spirit Box and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you had that, and you could hear the Refused. You could you just heard the potential. And that was the amazing thing. It was like, this band should be huge. They're not gonna be, but there are so many bands in the 90s that never made it that should have been huge over other bands. But just everything from the drumming, Frederick's drumming, to the way that classic hardcore China, just hitting the China cymbal the whole time. Like that's like the call to war for hardcore. Luckily, unfortunately, he didn't have the piccolo snare, but
thank God.
Snapcase thing. We'll get you into Snapcase. It's all piccolo snare. It's wild tight. But yeah, like this was just listening to hardcore, and hearing this this is insane. Like this shouldn't exist. In no world should these genres of straight edge hardcore and early 80s heavy metal and power metal blend and work,
Yeah.
And it did. And this was before anybody like In Flames or At the Gates were at those times, those were straight death metal bands. They weren't doing this yet. Meshuggah hadn't invented yet. And those are all bands from their neck of the woods. So it's kind of like those bands made it huge. These guys didn't. But I don't know. I've been preaching this record to every person I see somebody with a Refused shirt or at a hardcore show, and I'm like, have you heard Purusam? I've been preaching this band for 30 years. And
It's wild.
Yeah. And nobody knows about it. And it really is to me. And it is the epitome of a dig me out, because, one thing, this record was never released in the United States. Their first one was reissued with Victory when Victory was trying to kind of like, oh, Refused is huge. Let's grab all this, the Yuma stuff and put it out. And they put out the first run. It didn't sell, so they didn't put this stuff out. But yeah, like this never came to the States. Didn't do game. It's not one of those bands that never came to the States. Did big gangbusters in Europe. Didn't happen. I just
luckily
think
luckily it's on streaming now, so
Yeah.
we can't hear it without too much trouble.
And they did in 2022. They actually did a remaster and a repress of both records on vinyl.
Oh, nice.
So that's what's on streaming. If you get to the right one, you can find the remastered version, which really brings the mastering back up with guitars.
Wanted to mention too the drumming. It does have some similarities to Refused to me too, and just the way the drums are composed, how they're used. But the other thing I want to call out though is, I love metal drumming. I love double kick. It can become almost forgettable. It's like how many different ways can you play it or make it sound? At some point it kind of loses its impact. It never loses its impact on this record. Like when he uses the double kick, like it jumps out and punches you in the chest, and the way that I think it's because one way that just it's engineered, the drums are very punchy, but they also do a good job of I think the second guitar, the bass, helping accent when those double kick parts come in. So when they're there, you're like, damn, this is brutal, or locking in the vocal with it. Like they do a good job of figuring out okay, we're going to go, we're going to do this rhythmically and everybody's going to support it. So it's not just an onslaught of double kick blast beats forever that after a while you're just numb to. It's like when it happens here, it has meaning. And I think that's along with the guitars, like when they do something technical, it's for a reason. It's not just to show off or be more extreme. You know, some of this music as it gets in the 2000s, I start to zone out because it's like, okay, everybody's just trying to be more extreme. Everybody's trying to scream louder than the other band has screamed. Whereas to me, this feels like it's all orchestrated in a way to like, and it's all at the edges of their abilities to where I just identify it on a human level. I don't know how else to say it. It feels real and authentic, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not like we're just trying to be, you know, heavier than the last band we heard. Like, I don't hear that here. I hear like a group of people who have a bunch of weird ideas and they're mashing them together and figuring out how to make them all work together as a band.
It's like your buddy's band in high school that you liked actually recorded something not to 4-track in the garage, but actually in a studio and did something with it. And it's that immediacy, and you know, to the point of like the drums and the rhythm section, like the bass and the drums on these songs are just locked in like Halloween or Maiden, like they're just in sync, and that's. Like, you didn't really get that in the 90s, especially in hardcore, where they're like, we're going to go for it. We're on a train. This is the rhythm of a train. Here we go. And it's that Iron Maiden. And it's, you know, that's why I just hear Maiden all over it.
There's almost some galloping. That's
for sure.
Exactly. There's some galloping rhythms, especially like the song One Art. That's the one with the midway. You just start hearing him hit that china, and then he just starts going on the drums, and the bass comes in near the end of that song, and just like, why do I feel like I should be in an arena? This is arena hardcore. You know? Should be holding up my Bic lighter and going.
As an aside, I took my daughter to her piano lesson this week, and I was playing some music in the car, and something came up that had double kick, and she goes, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, it's a double kick." And she goes, "It's making my tummy feel weird."
Yes, exactly.
I was like, yeah,
as it should.
As it should.
Jay, is there anything that doesn't work for you on the record?
Not a whole lot. I'm a little conflicted on the only point I have here is there is some peaking going on with the mix. So you hear it on the opening track when they launch into that double kick. I mean, it is way over the red. It's distorting in a way that you typically wouldn't want your album to distort. It happens again on Doom, and I think throughout the record here and there you hear it happen. And I'm conflicted on it because there's a charm to it that I think also aligns with the production decision here, you know, doing something real dry and immediate sounding and having it be a little over compressed isn't a terrible thing. But I think right out of the gate, it struck me the first couple of times I listened to the record is this going to be like amateurish? You know, is this going to be like a demo, you know, rough demo recording? Like, what kind of record am I getting into? You know, just going into it blind, not doing any research on the band at all. And then as the record settled in, I was like, oh no, it's okay. You know, production wise, I think, you know, I'm getting maybe why they did that. It just threw me for a loop for a second as the record starts to have it kind of be over, you know, loud and clipping. And then by the time I got into the record and spent more time with it, I started to feel like, well, maybe it's supposed to be that way. Maybe it was a mistake. Like maybe they did that on purpose to like really just, make it sound like it's literally like breaking the speakers. So I don't know. I was a little thrown by that. And the more I listened to it, the more I forgave it. It just set a weird, I think, expectation that as I got into the album the first couple times, that's really the only thing that didn't work for me. How about you, Tim?
Well, I noticed that too, and I was wondering if it was just a bad transfer to the streaming services.
Yeah, it just made me think about things. I'm like, I don't want to be thinking about that. Like, I just want to be into the record, not thinking about like, did somebody fuck up the mastering, or when they sent this to Apple Music, did somebody screw something up, or is the whole record going to be like this?
Because there are definitely records that haven't had, a lot of attention and have been ignored as far as represses and remasters and stuff like that don't sound good on streaming services. Like they sound either like there's no bass, like they're too dry, or they're too mid-rangey or whatever. There's always something like off a little bit, and it usually happens with a 90s CD only release. So as far as what doesn't work, I mentioned earlier, I don't love the screaming vocal. I think because when I hear it, I start paying it. There isn't like a melodic movement to it in terms of notes. It doesn't go like up and down. He stretches or shortens the length of his cadence and how he delivers the words, but there isn't like a melody in the traditional way of a vocal that I'm used to. So I'm just not able to wrap my brain around it. I can't make out a single word. And that might just be because I'm old and decrepit and I don't know what the kids are up to these days, but there's just a disconnect with me. And I really love the music of this record. I would listen to this constantly. If he switched more, he switches a couple times to like his singing voice, but it's not as much as, I know we've mentioned the Refused record 50 times, but it's not as much as like Dennis Lyxzén switches between screaming and singing. And then there's a second vocal that happens that's more talking. And that's really the only thing. Like I really dug everything that was happening here. So that would be the only thing holding it back for me. So Keith, is there anything that doesn't work for you on the record? No. Okay. That's okay.
When you listen to hardcore, as much as I have, it's just like anything else. I know exactly what he's saying every time. I can pick it out. You just get used to how that sounds, and you can understand the words. Just like I can listen to death metal and figure out what they're saying.
The only thing I can equate it to is I use Duolingo because I'm learning Italian.
Yeah, it's another language.
What?
It's like another language.
It is. Like when I do Duolingo and they talk, I go, I can understand what they're saying. When I listen to an actual Italian speaker, they go so fast that I'm like, I don't know what the hell like. I know that there were words in there, but I don't know where they ended and began. And like, it's so confusing. That's the only way I just get confused. I'm just like, where's the vowel? Where is the consonant in these vocals? So that was the only thing that was like confusing to me. Let's talk about overall ratings on this record. Worthy album, better EP, or decent single? Jay, where do you land?
I'm not a huge hardcore fan. I do like Refused, Shape a Punk to Come. That was kind of a revelation for me. But I've found myself, other albums not being able to really get into the genre as much. And I think the diversity of that record and the dynamics that are there and just creatively, it just connected. I think I like this album more than Refused. To me, this sounds like the shape of metal to come. Now I realize it's hardcore album, and I think it's, categorized by Apple as punk. I don't know, man. When I listen to this, I'm like, holy shit, this is a really creative metal album. And I hear where a lot of other bands picked up on this. And it's, in a lot of ways, in the 2000s and 2010s, it seems as though, this laid a blueprint for where things would go. I think it hits in my sweet spot a little more than Refused does. Um, I think it's more cohesive. There's long spans of that Refused album where, you get lost in the divergence. There are long moments where they're doing something totally different. This always brings you back on rails pretty quick. There'll be like a fun twist that comes. And you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. Okay, we're got a little Celtic folk melody going on here. Okay. And then we're back, but it fit. And then when the female vocal comes in, you're like, oh, that's a nice break, or cool. Now they're singing together. I don't know. It's just all the flourishes and creative ideas to me are serving a larger idea that's more cohesive than Refused, what the Refused album is for me. So it's a worthy album. This was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to listening to it more. It's a shame this band didn't do more. Maybe it's for the best. It sort of got at least one great idea down and out there into the world, and didn't ruin it with a bunch of follow-ups or a reunion 20 years later. But yeah, this was kind of a revelation. It's a really interesting album. As soon as you said they were from, I don't do any research going to these. I just listen to the record, and Tim does all the band stuff so that we can kind of react in real time on the podcast. So when you mentioned they were from Sweden, I was like, how did I not hear that? Like, of course they're from Sweden. Of course. Like, this album doesn't happen in the United States. Like, I don't know why, but like the influences there are different. It just, the way they hear music is different. Like, this makes all the sense in the world now that I know that this is a Swedish band. So this is fun.
There's just something in the ice up there, I guess. I don't know.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Tim, where you at?
Staying in the basement and making records, listening to records. I'm also at a worthy album. I think for someone who's not familiar with this, like me, like focusing in on the music that, like, especially when I was, like I said, with the headphones, that was just like, it was such a revelation to hear everything that was happening. And the fact that I feel like, I don't know how you differentiate between like hardcore and metalcore and what these different things are, but I feel like this sounds more real, like analog. Whereas sometimes I hear bands that are quote unquote like metalcore or even just new metal of the last 20 years, and the guitars sound like digital. They sound extremely fake. And I hate that. Like, I cannot stand that sound of guitar, and it turns me off immediately. So to hear this band doing this style, but with, like you said, like I did probably Marshalls or something akin to that. It's such a cool, like, lived in sound that it's totally worth checking out. I do want to point out though, and I don't understand how this is possible. I was looking through like hardcore bands because I don't really know a ton besides some that we've mentioned here, but right next to Refused is Red Cross, and I was like, how is Red Cross a hardcore band? Like, I don't understand that.
Their early 80s records, like, they were kind of a punk hardcore band, considered punk hardcore, until they sort of figured out their sound.
I guess I'm confused of where the line is drawn between hardcore and punk, because is hardcore a subgenre of punk?
Yes. So punk was first. Hardcore was, can we make this faster, louder, and just, hardcore is very political.
Okay.
For the most part. Especially straight edge hardcore, Youth of Today, Minor Threat, 108, Warzone, H2O, Sick of It All. That's all traditional hardcore. And then you get into like metalcore, kind of starting in the 90s. There's so many subgenres of metalcore. It's not even funny. And hardcore, I mean, to the fact that Turnstile is hardcore and they just won a Grammy.
Yeah.
They sound like 311.
I don't think of 311 as hardcore, so not sure what's going on there.
There is some hardcore relevance to 311, especially if you saw them back in like the early 90s on the music tour. Those shows got rowdy.
And the piccolo snare.
Yes.
And the piccolo snare. This is perfunctory, but I'm going to ask you, Keith, were the album better EP or decent single?
Oh, we're the album.
Of course.
All day long. If we could get just one more person to find this record, that's all. Like, needs to be heard.
We need to get their Spotify streaming up over 300 monthly listeners.
Yeah. Although I think maybe because of the poll and stuff, it might have gone up because a couple months ago it was like 156. So
there you
it's
go.
Gone up.
It's the dig me out effect.
Yeah.
We'll do a little promotion around this episode and see if we can get a couple people to check it out.
Well, our community was split three ways. Were the album better EP, decent single? Split 33, 33, 33, and then 1% abstained, I guess. I don't know where that 1% went. It just disappeared.
Yeah.
Or it's 33.3 repeating.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the last time we had a three-way split for votes on that, but
let's do a quick why didn't this album make it in bigger? This is not a great band name. Sometimes it comes down to superficial things. Like,
yeah,
this band name is tough for me. Like, even when I was reviewing it, I was, what is the name of the band I'm listening to? I kept looking at it, and like the album cover doesn't tell me a whole lot. I mean, I guess
the reissue special edition album cover is better, although it makes you think they're a death metal band, but it is better. The album cover for the first record is not good, and then the Victory version of it is even worse. So they did not have a good marketing department.
Yeah.
That's where their creativity lacked, was in album covering. Plus the label. I mean, Desperate Fight is a very little label. The only band that made it out of there was Refused. And that's because they signed to Victory and then Epitaph. But it was just, I mean, it was a local label. I mean, it's the same reason in the US why bands on Revelation never made it big, because it's Southern California hardcore label.
Right.
Until recently, Equal Vision Records never made it big. Victory just lucked out with the whole emo explosion when Hawthorne Heights and Thursday hit. But yeah, I'd say label, just really small. They didn't have any distribution, especially outside of Europe, of the EU. And then Victory, when they got it, they didn't promote it. Just went out in a pack. Like, I remember being a DJ and getting a pack, and there was 5 records, and it was all the Desperate Fight reissues. And it was Final Exit and Avananda and Purusam and a couple others. And you're like, what is this? There was no promo behind it. There was no, chart this or whatever. It's just, here you go.
Yeah.
They didn't tour the States. These guys, I would imagine they never came to the States. They probably played Germany and Sweden and Switzerland, and who knows if they even made it across the pond to England.
Yeah.
According to Discogs, other than Sweden, the only other place this was released is Spain. So maybe they had some sort of fan base there that they actually serviced.
There's metal scene in Spain and Greece and those countries.
Purusam, the name would have had if it would have hit, it would have gotten some legs with the name. Yeah, I'll defend the name. Because there's a subgenre of hardcore called Krishnacore, which is Hare Krishna hardcore. And even though these guys,
wait, what? You just made that up. These guys are not Krishna, not Hare Krishna, but Krishna. If these guys are not Krishna, the name would have thrown them in there. They get lumped into Krishnacore just because the name. Biggest Krishnacore band was Shelter. Shelter, 108, Cause for Alarm, things like that. And
so
comparing it
subgenre.
Comparing it to Refused, Punk to Come, I mean, that you could tell that had a momentum behind the release, right? I mean, the album art is on key, the band name's great. Even the album title, I mean, they're making a statement like, hey, pay attention to us. This is important, But it was also packaged up and supported in a way that
previous album
record,
too.
Yeah.
That record did not do anything when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
It died. And it wasn't until probably years later that people jumped on it, and it was really because for some reason, some music supervisor somewhere picked it up for Friday Night Lights and threw it in there. And then New Noise took off. And that was 5-6 years later. I remember when that record came out, I remember seeing Refused on that tour. They played in somebody's basement.
Yeah.
Like, it was not a big tour. It's not
right.
You know,
but it got him to the States, and
it did get
put him in a
States.
Position where somebody would pick the song up eventually. And it's sort of built over time.
They had some notoriety before that because of their earlier records released on Victory. So they were a Victory band. They were out there touring with Snapcase and Earth Crisis and other vegan straight edge bands. So.
Gotcha.
I thought this is over 25 years ago, but the first International Noise Conspiracy album came out in 2000. Mm-hmm. And I was already aware of Refused when that came out, because I was like, oh, it's the guy from Refused. Yeah. And then, but the Refused album comes out in what, 98?
Early 98, like January 98.
So sometime there between when that came out and when Survival Sickness was released, we somehow heard that record. I have no idea.
We were into the record when it came out. They had a video. I remember the video being played.
Yeah, New Noise.
Oh, I remember the video.
MTV. But I mean, I remember going to that tour in the summer, and like that's where the documentary "Refused is Fucking Dead" came from. Is they imploded on that tour and broke up, and I saw them a couple of days before that. But it was literally a house show. They weren't playing clubs; they were playing house shows. That's how big they were.
But that
wild.
Sometimes how bands break up, like there's an expectation of like, hey, this is going to be a big record, and then it's not as big as you thought. I mean, it did okay, relatively, like for a hardcore record, it's probably fine.
Yeah, it was probably big. I mean,
they had maybe bigger expectations than what it ended up being.
It was. I mean, I think they wanted to be I don't think they wanted to be. I think expectations were it was going to be the next Hatebreed, and it wasn't, because at that time Hatebreed had started to take off. And they were just a little bit different, but it really was the shape of punk to come. And it's almost like I said, Purusam, obviously, because you have the member was shared for a while, and he wrote a lot of stuff for Shape of Punk to Come. John Branston, like you can hear it. This is almost the like you said, the template, the personal version without the editing and the computers and all that. This is the stripped down guys in the garage doing that style. Yeah. Without all the tech, which makes it more immediate and to me more real.
Yeah, it makes it hold up too. It sounds classic, timeless.
Yeah.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for bringing this record to us. We've uncovered something new.
Yeah. No way we ever find this record.
No.
Wait till you see what I got next.
Oh yeah, you'll be back.
What decade are you doing? Did you pick?
Doing the decade? 90s, but it's like it's 1990, and it is a England only release. Never came to the States.
Love it.
There's your tease.
Yeah,
that'll be later in the year. Keith will be back with us, and we'll be discussing the mystery pick from 1990. 1990 is probably the year that like we were thinnest on in a lot of respects.
Yeah. Yep. Not a lot of picks in 90.
Yeah.
So
the fun thing about my next pick is band never heard of in the US, massive in England. Like they still play and they headline festivals.
Are you talking about the Manic Street Preachers?
No, they had US distribution.
I know.
People didn't.
No, we're well aware. I've had to travel to see the Manics. Never in my hometown. I always have to travel to see.
Oh yeah, you travel to Detroit and Austin to see them.
Yes. Well, I want to remind the folks at home that if this episode brought back good memories and positive vibes, join us at digmeoutpodcast.com for our free archive of over 850 episodes, history of the band posts, and weekly new release roundups. If you'd like more, paid subscribers unlock bonus podcast episodes covering 70s, 80s, and aughts rock, new release reviews, and access to our private Discord community. That's digmeoutpodcast.com. And while you're there, suggest an album you think deserves to be featured on a future episode of Dig Me Out. Anybody can do it, whether you're a patron or not. I've done it. I'll admit, I throw some ideas into there. I find obscure things on blogs, and I'm like, well, we got to throw this in because, especially if it's not streaming, I'm like, oh, it's not streaming. This will be fun.
And then when I do the poll, I'm like, Tim suggested that. I'm going to skip it.
Thanks.
Oh, maybe we'll get some people throwing some hardcore in there.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I need to submit under a fake name.
Don't do that.
Jim Petrucci.
Straight to jail.
Thanks. All right. For Jay, I'm Tim. We're out. I'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.